Strange Adventures, issue 10, Tom King, writing with Mitch Gerads and Doc Shaner on the art. And this has been obviously a fantastic book throughout its run, and this is a very prominent issue because this is the one where Mr. Terrific sends a letter. He sent a letter to Alana, and she basically, the narration of this issue is the letter as we see her kind of going about her day after she's read the letter. You know, she reads this in the morning, and the art, for the most part, at least in the present day stuff, is all her. You know, she showers, she puts on her makeup, she goes and does publicity, she takes photos with the army and the military. She gets the jetpack to go there and come back, and then she takes off her makeup, she gets ready for bed, and eventually Adam comes home and asks, this is a letter from Terrific, what's that about?
Yeah,
that's that. I mean, obviously we'll get into what's in the letter in a minute.
No,
but,
right.
Yeah.
But it's also what she's doing as a representative of Rand, and it looks like she is making weapon sales, right? It looks like they're selling Randian technology to the military to fight the Picts.
The beauty of it, though, is that all of this is done with the knowledge she's learned from this letter. And so as she's going through the day and she's pretending to still be the same Alana, and she's putting on the fake smile, she's doing all these things. She's doing all this knowing that her heart is probably changed from what it was that morning, when she read it. So
yeah, she's still putting on a face, though.
But the beauty of it, though, is that we don't know everything yet, because we're only just discovering the letter as the issue goes on. So we're only getting a sense that there's something underlying as she's doing the press, as she's talking to the president, as she's taking these photographs, and there's just this kind of like this hiding of emotion. And to be fair, that's been a big theme of the book, because Adam's been hiding how he's been really feeling the entire time. So you get all this going on. So, and we see kind of the ends of the war. We see Adam killing various Picts, his execution style throughout the book. We see him strategizing. They even give us a map of Ran, I guess, at the start, and talk about how they've captured some of the East, so now they have to try and take the West and all the rest of it.
It shows how brutal this war has become with the Picts on Rand. It's not like this gentleman's war, right? Like, we see him go down to the sea people, right? And just see how many of them are just floating there dead, and then we see the sea people attack what I would assume was a Pict creature, and how vicious and brutal they are. And it's like, what has this war done to the residents of Rand? Underlying this. But we also got, towards the end of that part of the story, we get that fun thing where it's Shayna's art, but it goes from finished to unfinished, right? Like, as you go across the page. So again, it's almost like, is this just a fabrication? What exactly is the truth? And that's what leads here too, because I know this is Mr. Terrific's, I figured it out, but there's still 2 issues left, right?
Yeah, there's still more to this. There's definitely going to be more. I think one of the things I love about the start is even the idea that the first thing Alana does after reading this letter is she goes for a shower. Like, she has to go and clean herself off. Of it. It's very symbolic. It makes a lot of sense. And then the idea of putting on the fake face, because we talked about how she's it's the fake smile. She's doing all this publicity, knowing what she knows now. But the idea of putting on makeup it's almost a very literal. You're putting on your face. You're putting on your fake face. It's not quite a mask, but in a way it kind of is.
Right.
So yeah, to get to the actual content of this letter, though, which is, basically Terrific talking about how there's 3 inconsistencies. There's 3 things that don't quite add up. And the first one is that you shouldn't have won the war, right? The Pict War on Ran, you should not have won that. Something doesn't add up. Like, they basically let you win, which is just kind of interesting. And then the second side of it is, it also doesn't make sense that we are losing. That, they've somehow outsmarted Batman, and that doesn't usually happen.
With Phoenix, because Batman had plans to preserve cities, and there's no way the Picts could have figured that out. It's Batman. And then Mr. Terrific even mentions, he's like, there's a lot of people here that believe that if Batman has enough time, you can't defeat him. So this doesn't line up.
Yeah. And and obviously as we're reading some of this, we're seeing the horrific imagery of like just like executing picked up and down a beach. And if you think back to like again before we get to the final revelation, but if you think back to like when the various picked were yelling Adam Strange's name, and like they really like give across this idea of how much they hate him as a war criminal and all that. But so we have that. So the pick chose to lose the war. I love that line is given as she's at the podium at the White House. There's something so symbolic about the idea of like lying on that stage, like lying in that particular place. It's just very
and how bad that is.
Yeah. So that's a really neat touch. That's when you get all the stuff with the water on Ran itself. But yeah, so it's like okay, so but why are we losing? Like we're losing. Like this is the thing. You talk a lot about Ran fighting back and winning the war and how hard it was, but if you stop and think about it, like Earth is way better prepared for something like this. We have an entire Justice League. We have an army of superheroes.
Multiversal shenanigans, I believe he says.
We've had crisis after crisis. We fought off alien invasions, but Ran never had. Ran somehow won this war, and right. So obviously it ties back into them letting them win. But why are we losing now? This is strange. Like something's not quite right. Clearly the amount of effort the war was, which again suggests that they were underfighting, on Ran. So, and I mean, obviously, even the image again. We talked about the shower earlier, talking about cleaning off the what she's learned in the letter and putting on the face. But there's even a panel after she's made this speech to the White House. She reads some of the news sitting in a toilet seat. It's obviously a very intimate setting, but if you look at the idea of this art here, I mean, a person's at their most sort of embarrassed and vulnerable when they're sitting in a toilet seat, right? It's pretty straightforward stuff, but she literally goes straight from talking to the public and now knowing what she's saying is a lie, effectively. I mean, obviously she was always playing it up. She was always doing the politicizing of what it was, but now she knows it's all based on bullshit. And then she literally goes and has a shit. Like, I mean, that's a really crud way of putting it. But
if that's what she's doing, or like, I just think it's the vulnerability aspect. Whatever she's doing on the toilet, it's the fact that she is, like you said, at her most vulnerable. But that's where she is in the story.
But then she has to wash her hands clean of it as well. Now, obviously, yes, everyone washes their hands. Well, most people should wash their hands.
You should. Although the fact that we survived through a pandemic tells me that a lot of people don't do what they're supposed to over the course of the year. So
of course, but not only is it again the symbolism of washing and like getting her hands clean again after she's made this speech, in knowing she's lying, but the look she gives herself in the reflection, like the reflection, like if you go back to the few pages where she's on camera and she's putting on the smile, she's doing everything the way she's supposed to, and it's very, calibrated, it's very very orchestrated for the camera, and then you look at that expression in the mirror as she's washing her hands when she's private and alone, like she still has kind of a smile on her face when she's on the toilet seat, when she's looking at the phone and she's like reading the responses, like things are going well. It's almost like for a second she kind of forgot like that she was, the charade she knew she was in now.
Well, again, that's where she's at her most, right? That's where she doesn't have to put on anything, right? Like,
well, no, that's what I'm saying though. Like she's no, but that's what I'm saying. She's not gotten to that point yet. She's kind of forgotten, and she's sort of like saying, "Oh, the speech was a success." She's looking at the responses on social media or whatever, but then it hits her again what she's learned that morning, and she's looking at the reflection in the mirror. Like like I'm wondering if there's like a sort of a sequential sort of thought process, because she's kind of smiling in that top panel. It's like she's not quite like tuned into that side of her yet. But yeah, so the art, I mean, obviously what I'm really saying here is the art is phenomenal. There's so many like subtleties and everything with that, with Alana's expressions, the double meaning behind things. But then she's back into public mode where she's talking to the military and she's looking at the weapons and the tanks and all the rest of it. But this is where the letter gets really interesting, though, is because it starts talking about, the start of the book, the Strange Adventures book that Adam wrote was, for my daughter, whom I lost in the war, my life is spent with grief. And Terrific goes on to analyze what this actually meant in the Bible, where this quote comes from, and how it wasn't about mourning a death, it was about what you felt guilty about, it was about what you gave up.
Yeah.
And we've been theorizing so much. Is the daughter actually dead, or did he let her be killed to win the war? Which I think that was probably the biggest theory, or the strongest one, which is that he actually gave the daughter up to be murdered as a sacrifice to win the war in some way or something. Turns out it's actually kind of worse. And again, talk about the symbolism, that final panel in that 9-panel grid, where it says the thing that it says in the letter here, as he's finishing this passage from the Bible, it says they devised to take away my life. It says that as she's standing in front of a huge American flag, and it's that simple thing where she is tiny, she feels so small, and she's enveloped by the country and the flag and the status of that.
It's basically that. It's also, if you look at the meta context of it, this country especially will love to, support the troops, support the military. But then when they come back from fighting, it's, oh, you have no use for us. It's super hard for veterans, right? To adapt back to life. And it's basically here almost like, it's almost the culture to stack up like you're such a hero. Oh my God, all the sacrifices you made. Yet they're only words. Like there's little actions people actually follow.
And keep in mind, the 2 pages or whatever before this is her encouraging the young troops to go and fight. And I think that final panel here, the symbolism of not just the fact that it's the flag, but the idea that she feels small and she feels like she's being dwarfed by the idea of the flag and being like swallowed up by it. Is that churn? That churn. Yeah. And obviously King, who was in the CIA, the fact that he's putting themes like this, maybe this gives us an insight into how maybe he felt at times, that he's part of the machine, that he's part of the system.
Exactly, and that's what that whole final line is. They devised to take away my life. Yeah. Is you get me over there, tell me how important, and then we're just a piece of the machine. You don't actually mean any of this.
And that transition on the next page as well, because she flies off with a jetpack, and the troops are all looking up at her, and it transitions to her with a jetpack, in the war in Ran, and they're talking about winning, and they're all united, killing the Pict, and like you say, it comes undone. That last panel is where the art, like the color fades away, and it's not finished.
We're winning, and it's just pure chaos, right?
And it's but this is the thing, it's at the end of it, right? And it's as she's arriving home, it transitions back to her arriving home. So it's the idea that in her head, the heroic image she had of her husband in the war is being undone. Yeah. Right. And she lands, she starts to undo her shirt and like get comfortable, takes off the makeup. And again, the face changes. Like she's very stern looking by the end of that page.
Well, through all of this, she looks very glamorous, right?
Yeah.
And then here, this last panel, she's got a warrior face, right? This is a woman that's seen battle, for sure.
And I think more to the point, she's getting ready to go into a fight. And but the fight's with Adam, the fight's not with anything else.
And in the mirror, because and also here she's broken, right? This is, King and Garrett's working in unison to show that this has fractured her.
Oh yeah,
right?
she's obviously
her husband, her planet.
The next page she smashes the mirror, and it's this thing. But it's during this page where she's taking off the makeup with the wipes, where we hear the meat of this, right? The real, the theory is that Adam, he faked the daughter's death. Aaliyah was not killed. Basically, he gave up Earth. He made a deal. This is the theory.
Save Ran.
He basically let us save Ran, and you can have Earth, which maybe is more desirable for whatever reason. And as collateral, they've taken the daughter. And all of this war crime stuff with him brutally murdering Pict, they basically agreed to do that so that he would never look suspicious, so that you'll look like you were overly vicious. And that's something that Terrific talks about, is that when they accused Adam of all the stuff that he'd done in the war to win, like, it was then spun by her as, yeah, exactly, that's how determined we were, that's why you need us on your side to win, which in turn makes Adam look like the last person who would have made a deal with the enemy. And
well, we've done this too in U.S. history, right? Like, who armed bin Laden against the Soviets? The United States, who then in turn create problems with Al Qaeda later down the line. You know, we have a history of doing this, of arming people who end up becoming our foes. And here, you know.
Yeah, what I think is wonderful about this is that obviously, you know, the final lines of this, as he's summing this up, you know, like, you shouldn't have won the war. We should be winning based on you winning, because we're much stronger than you are, just from a power level. And then on top of that, your daughter, like, she did not die. Like, and he sums it up by saying he lied to Ran, he lied to Earth, and he lied to you. Now, part of me likes the idea, of course, that Alana is a good enough person that she would still be upset if she found out that Adam tried to sacrifice a whole other planet of innocent people to save Ran. And maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't. But to make it personal, he gave up their daughter to do it. And so maybe we'll find out where her morality lies amongst the other details. But if nothing else, her daughter was taken from her and she was told that she was dead.
Right.
For this lie, for this purpose.
Right. I could almost get around the fact that she was almost fine with giving up Earth, like you said, right? But she had never factored in her daughter having a part of that. And that her daughters are somewhere presumably still alive, because that's the collateral, right? Like, they're not going to kill her until Earth is theirs.
And keep in mind as well that, you know, her whole thing these past months, whatever, is been to convince Earth how to fight, that they need to fight. Her job has effectively been trying to convince everyone how to save Earth. And she's believing that is her goal. And the whole time is that maybe Adam's like, nah, not really. Like, you know, and I'm thinking of that end of that issue, whatever it was, 7-6, whatever it was, with him sitting in the room with all the body bags, crying. Now think about the context of that scene now, knowing what he may have done, assuming that Terrific is completely right.
Well, there's that too, and Phoenix in and of itself. What did he have to do with Phoenix now? Because if that reeks of an inside, right? How'd the Pix figure out Batman's defenses and whatnot, right? That's Terrific's whole point of bringing that up. But they still managed to. Yeah,
and I love the fact that there's some blood smeared in the glass of the stairs when Alana's coming down, because she's punched the mirror. Her hand's obviously bleeding.
Her fist is still bleeding.
Yeah. It's a really nice touch, and it looks down because obviously we hear on the previous page, right after she smashed the mirror, Alana, you upstairs, whatever. He has no idea what's about to come for him, and he looks up. You know, that final panel, the first time we see Adam in present day in this issue, is him looking up saying, Alana, is everything okay? And like, I hope the next issue is just, because I almost think that maybe there'll be a different format next issue, because now we've gotten to the end of the fantasy of what the war was. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't think there'll be flashbacks still, but it'll be the true flashbacks of the deal or something like that. Yeah.
But what we saw, how, because it keeps getting less and less like these are fun space adventure war to look how brutal this war was.
But even that's part of the lie, the propaganda, as pointed out by this issue. That they want Adam to look like he did go too far, but that's to convince you that he would never work with them.
Right, but I'm talking about Rand in and of itself. Like, he was also getting them, he was getting the different factions of Rand to become as brutal as him, right? You know, so if that all plays as part of the lie.
Yeah, not even just that. The idea of the pride that Alana felt that her planet was able to fight this off is a lie as well. She's felt pride over nothing. Everything she said in the news about, oh, you need us because we were able to win this. No, you didn't. It was all a facade. So not only has he lied about, on a very, very personal level, the death of her daughter, which is like soul crushing. Like, she could have had her daughter with her all these years, but all the pride that she's felt, and the fact that everyone else on Rand who also felt this pride, it's all based on a lie. is actually kind of devastating. And maybe there's more to this, and I do think there's maybe a bit of a swerve, because I don't know if we're going to go quite outright to Adam helped like destroy an entire city on Earth, because that is actually very dark.
Yeah. But he might as well have, because of this deal. And again, I don't think Holt has it all completely figured out. I think there's more to that story too.
I think
that's going to be revealed.
There may be some more to make us think he could be more redeemed, but right now it doesn't feel that he can be redeemed.
Right now, he's the villain of the story.
Yeah. And I think, because what I love about this is I'm thinking back to the previous issues, and I remember talking about how at first Alana felt more villainous than he did, and it felt like she was pulling the strings, but then as time went on, it felt like, no, it seems like he knows stuff that she doesn't. Now looking back, like, that's almost part of the whole fabrication, is that he made her, because of who she is and her personality type, all of her attitude came from what they went through, from losing their daughter, from the war they fought, which was apparently mostly fake, right? Obviously, there was really people dying on both sides, but it was all kind of like a staged thing,
right?
And all of that, like, she's the one who has had her strings pulled, in a sense. Again, assuming all of this is completely right, and I suspect that a lot of it is in the ballpark, if not right. Like, I expect there'll be some more details. There might be a little bit of a swerve with some of it, but. There's too much of this that lines up with everything so far that...
I still think there's a part of it that has to do with that interrogation they did of him. Almost as if they made him a sleeper agent kind of deal. You know what I mean? Like, not that it didn't necessarily freeze him from stuff, but I was getting, even though I've never seen the show, from seeing it discussed, I was getting Homeland vibes throughout this. Like, here's this American hero who's returned that's really a sleeper agent. And how much more destruction and chaos can he cause from the inside versus the out? And that's what I was getting throughout as I read this. So
yeah, I would love to go back and read all the issues again, because I feel like knowing this and knowing, like, just thinking about how Rand treated Mr. Terrific when he was there, like, and their pride from all this, knowing perhaps where it came from now, is just, it adds this extra layer to everything throughout the story. So
also, real quick, the quote that this ends on is from someone named Jack Kamen. So I looked him up, and he's an old school artist. He used to do stuff for EC Comics. He also did advertising art. So when you read this quote, so say you're doing an arm, you see the drapery crunch up to where the elbow breaks, and then the flare coming off the shoulder, seam down. Once you tell somebody this is what happens, why it happens, you rule supreme. I didn't understand that exactly until I looked up that he used to do advertising, and it's all about the sell, right? So if he was doing advertising art, him describing basically how to fake, like, you're not really drawing a dress, right? You're showing how it, how it sits on the arm. You don't actually need to know the nitty gritty to know, but it's almost like not a lie exactly, but it's almost a cheat. And I feel that's summation of this for both of their sides, right? Because what Alana's doing, going through and selling this idea of the war, to keep it going, of the Picts invading Earth, and then all of Adam's stuff, and how he was able to sell it to her. It's just, there's layers upon layers here, and Tom King's way too smart. That's what we're getting down to. Between this and Rorschach, he's very, very smart.
That's what makes this interesting. This issue so interesting to me, is that, yeah, she has been doing the sell, but up until now, she's been doing it from a place of genuine, like, like, this is this day where she goes and does all this is the first time where she's had to do it knowing that it's kind of based on a falsehood, and that she's hawking something that isn't quite true, and that presumably now she actually might doubt that they can save Earth, and presumably Adam's going to have to, like, come clean and, like, help fight them back somehow. And how do you do that and get the daughter back if she indeed is there to be taken back? There's a lot of questions that arise from that. But
yeah,
now, a big issue, definitely the big one that changes things. And I think it makes sense to do this with 2 issues left, because there's so much, like, fallout to this. Like, I almost expect the next issue just to be them having their conversation the whole time. Like I expect just the back and forth between the two of them, with the truth of what the deal was, and then issue 12 probably how they kind of solve the war on Earth and win that. I mean, I'm sure I'll be more interested in that because King knows what he's doing, and I'm just ballparking. But phenomenal.
Yep.
I'm having a hard time faulting something in this. And obviously, the art is tremendous. We pointed out some moments and pieces, and just how much it adds to the story. Not just because it depicts what you're supposed to see, but the art also adds subtext constantly.
Yeah.
And that's something that a lot of comic books don't do. And I think it's something that King brings a lot out of his artists. He knows how to like direct them and how to let them sort of like add to the story in ways that are that's beyond just, oh, that looks like Batman jumping off of a roof and it looks very convincing or it looks very stylized. There's also subtext there too, and I think that's very impressive. All right, with that said, Matt, what are you giving Strange Adventures issue 10?
9.5.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with a 10. I was going to go 9.5 until we spoke about it, and I think it's one of those things where the more I think about it and the more I talk about, like, because I think when you're reading it and you're reading Alana go through all this, but you don't know everything she read yet. I think going back through it again and talking about it scene by scene and talking about all those moments she has with the full knowledge adds so much more to it. This book in general is one that just warrants being read twice every issue. Not because you won't follow or understand it, but because it just adds so much to it once you have the full scope of what the issue was trying to say. And I feel like I almost have that with every issue of this book when we talk about it. It's like every time we go back through it again and talk about each scene in context, it's like, oh, wait a minute. Like, I'm getting even more appreciation than I did when I actually read it. And
I found that with King, that happens a lot. So...
Which is
because
good.
It is so layered, like you said.
It's just so rewarding because of that.
Yep.
It's wonderful. So, and those pages I even mentioned, like, that page where she's flying off to the White House, but she's like holding her shoes.
Yeah.
While she's in there in her sort of fairly fancy business suit. Just, beautiful. The sun behind her, like, it's stunning stuff.